member of the audience.
When history looks back at the Civil War, there will be a few turning points that stand out. The Battle of Gettysburg, the Siege of Vicksburg, and the Battle of Sharpsburg. An often overlooked turning point is Sherman's march to the sea. Because of this, there was no turning back. Sherman led his army on a march with the intent to destroy the Confederate confidence and have them abandon the war. He was able to do just that, and let's find out how. General William T. Sherman of the Union Army led over 60,000 soldiers from November 14th to December 21st of 1864 on a 284-mile march from Atlanta to take Savannah, Georgia, to take Confederate supplies, scare them into abandoning the Confederate cause, and live off the Confederate land. Sherman believed that the Confederacy was strong because of the support of sympathetic Southerners, but also their wives and families. The Southern Democrats wanted the Confederacy to win, so their beliefs in continuing state laws and owning slaves to benefit their families and plantations. General Sherman knew that plantations supported the Confederate cause and the plantations provided goods and supplies to the Confederate Army. Sherman thought if he could destroy the plantations, farms, and railroads that transported the goods, he could destroy the efforts of the Confederate Army. Also, his troops would make life miserable for anyone in their way. Their path included Confederate soldiers, their families, sympathizers, and force them to abandon the war. Sherman split his troops into two formations that he staggered about 30 miles apart as they marched their way to Savannah, a true scorched earth tactic, leaving nothing behind, from food to houses and goods. Some of the goods being important, like livestock and cotton, going into the deep winter. They burned homes, farms, factories, stole and looted provisions, and ripped up miles and miles of railway, taking railroad ties and wrapping them around trees. These trees became known as Sherman's neckties. The Confederate cavalry attempted to fight back against a Union troop in Griswoldville, Georgia, but that left 650 Confederate dead compared to only 60 Union deaths. The South didn't fight much longer. The South was beginning to feel defeated, and instead of fighting, ran ahead of Sherman's army and burned and destroyed the towns before the Union Army could reach them. When Sherman's troops reached the end of their march and arrived in Savannah to find it abandoned, the 10,000 Confederate soldiers that were supposed to be guarding it had fled the city. Sherman gifted President Abraham Lincoln 25,000 bales of cotton from Savannah as a Christmas present that year. Sherman's march was a success for the Union Army, and it did exactly what Sherman hoped it would do. It hurt Southern morale and weakened the Confederate Army by limiting their supplies and making it impossible for them to fight at a full capacity. It also took away their morale to fight back, a knife in the back, or comparable to the atomic bomb being dropped in Imperial Japan to save hundreds of thousands of lives. Ultimately, Sherman continued his path of destruction into South Carolina, destroying Charleston. By April, the South had succeeded. The war was over. Sherman's army did over $100 million in damage across Georgia. They lived off the land and destroyed anything they thought was useful to the Confederate Army. A famous quote from the time was, "The South would never forget." This successful march was seen as a hastening to the end of the war, a horrible tragedy to help end an awful cause. Now you know why Sherman's March is the overlooked turning point of the Civil War. Thank you for listening.